Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. In a break from its European allies, the United States has aligned with Russia at the United Nations, voting against the resolution condemning Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. The move under newly elected U.S. President Donald Trump has strained the U.S. EU ties and raised speculations about Washington's shifting stance on the Russia-Ukraine war. India abstained from voting, and meanwhile several important developments have taken place in the past 24 hours, including a meeting between President Trump and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron. It was a rather awkward interaction as Macron fact-checked Donald Trump in real time during the joint media briefing at the White House. This happened when Trump began by asserting that Europe was just loaning money to Ukraine, to which Macron quickly replied saying that the money was paid to Ukraine and not loaned. Simultaneously, Russian President Vladimir Putin has held a telephone conversation with Chinese Premier Xi Jinping, where both the world leaders have reaffirmed strong ties. The question that comes up is, how does this major diplomatic shift impact global order, is what we're going to talk about in the next half an hour. Joining us on the program is Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev, former diplomat, Major General Sanjay Meston, senior defense expert, with us on the program as well, Adit Kothari, founding member of the Indic Society, with us on the program as well. Joyita Basu, editor of the Sunday Guardian, also joins us for this important discussion. Joyita, what do you make of this? Donald Trump basically shooting down a resolution which the Americans brought about themselves at this forum or were supportive of very much in the past, and now we are seeing a contrasting behavior from Donald Trump. What do you think? Is this an outreach or an overreach?
Well, I think I like that, outreach or overreach, but the fact of the matter is that this particular resolution which the US had brought, the Europeans had introduced certain wordings over there, because of which even India abstained, and that is also the reason why, because of what Europe was able to introduce, that was the reason why even Donald Trump, the US has kind of abstained from it. And but even then this particular resolution was passed because the Europeans had kind of put all their might behind it. So, you see, this is very interesting. If you are looking at a breach between Europe and the US, yes, I think it is possible, quite likely, but at the same time, this has to be seen in terms of what Trump thinks. Trump thinks in terms, Trump is basically bringing his personality to US geopolitics, and this is frankly quite it's a watershed moment for American, Western geopolitics, in terms of there are chances that the US may even come out of NATO. There is talk of that happening. Trump is under the firm belief that the Europeans are basically parasites. Okay, that is the fundamental problem that he has with these people, that they are parasites, they are leeches, they are kind of surviving on American money, American blood. They don't, their budget to NATO etc. is not up to the mark. This war could have been stopped, but for the Europeans, it's a different matter. Even the Americans did it, Joe Biden and all, and he is totally playing to his own gallery, which believes that his voters, his domestic audience, two planks. Basically, he was elected on number one, anti-immigration, and you can see the action that he is taking. Number two, that he is not a war president, he is going to bring this war to an end. So, that part he has taken care of, and now this is the part he is taking care of. So, he is totally thinking of American interests, and whatever all sorts of conspiracy theories and the canards that are being spread about him and Putin and all, he does not care. He just does not care. Of course, it goes without saying he has a very good relationship with Putin, and it is not now, it has been there for a long time. But the fact of the matter, he is very focused, and he thinks that Zelensky has taken the Americans for a ride. So, frankly, if you ask me, this is something that we could have never imagined, even I would say 3 months ago. Even if at the time he was elected, we never imagined that things could take such a turn. He is like, let's cut a deal with Putin. Putin is ready to cut a deal. Zelensky is no good, to which it's a different matter that Putin is also a dictator, but that he is not bothered about. And the thing is that Zelensky is no good, it's time for Zelensky to go. So, basically what Putin wants that status quo ante, meaning going back to pre-20, in fact, I would say even pre-2014, around that time when this Maidan revolution happened and this anti-Russian guy was made president. He is going back to 2014, pre-2014 situation, and Trump might just help him do that as long as there is peace, as long as there is no war. So frankly, this is very, very interesting that is going on.
Very, very interesting that's going on. Ambassador Sajdev, it seems that Donald Trump is very, very hell-bent on changing the world order. He seems to be ruffling feathers which haven't been ruffled in the past, and the biggest one of them could be, this shifting dynamics between the Americans and the Soviets. How would this play out? And is this going to come at the cost of antagonizing Europe and perhaps 1/3 of the world when you talk about America getting closer to Russia?
I think there are multiple games being played at the moment. The motive that Trump seems to be having are several. First, he wants to wean Russia away from China. As long as he figures out that as long as Ukraine war continues, Europe continues to be polarized, and Russians feel under threat from NATO, Russia is going to have to rely on China. So 21,000 sanctions being imposed on Russia since the beginning of Ukraine war need to go. Russia had to be admitted to G7, and they want it to be Russia to be part of the pre-2014 community of nations, where it had a stake in the West plus kind of ecosystem, and China was not there. So that is one part. Second part is that he wants to nudge West Europeans into playing greater role in under American tutelage, but less dependent on American money. To that end, he would like to have more rightist governments in Europe. Vice President Vance has already put at Munich conference recently Europe on notice for being anti-rightist, about preachers being arrested and so on and so forth, and being soft on immigration. Then again, he does want to see a lot of commonality between Russia and United States over reduction in defense budgets, over nuclear weapons being reduced, and over the commodities being priced right. So all that requires Putin and him to collaborate, and if Zelensky has to be useful idiot for it, if some West European neoliberals have to go, he doesn't mind. That's where my take is for beginners.
All right. General Mesto, obviously the collaboration between the Americans and the Russians, comes at a cost, also comes at a benefit for Russia in this case, and also perhaps comes at a benefit for the Americans. They no longer have to be, funding NATO and other European allies as they have in this war in the past. Do you think this is a good idea for the Americans and the United States, turning a new leaf in their relationship?
Yeah, obviously, firstly, time will tell whether it is a good idea, and obviously it has a cost factor to it. It can be benefits or it can be other way also. So the way things are going on, let us analyze the Trump strategy. Trump's strategy is as follows. Firstly, make America great again. But where is it leading on to as on date? How it is unfolding? His approval ratings are going down. Economy has not improved. And also what is happening that people are getting quite disgruntled the way he is doing all cuts in all these systems. He sacked the, chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Naval Chief and few other senior general officers, cutting down on the defense budget. So all this is unfolding, the way it is unfolding. I think America is going on a isolation mode. That is one. Second strategy is, closing up with Russia. The question which you have asked, thinking that it will be exactly the same the way it was at the end of Second World War, and how the Nazis had collapsed. So he is thinking on exactly on that lines, and also thinking on the lines of countering China with the help of Russia. Again, analyzing the benefits, I think it may not be beneficial. Reason being, firstly, the way strategy is unfolding, whatever is happening in Europe, I think America today is ditching all its trusted allies. These same allies have fought with the Americans in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Korea, in Vietnam. They have been always supportive of United States everywhere. It has been a very, very good collaboration, except, yes, that President Trump feels that the West is parasites on them. But I'll just give you an example of Afghanistan since I was there. I remember the regional commands. There was a UK regional command, a German regional command, a Canadian regional command. These people also were funding and they sustained casualties, large number of casualties. Now, America, tomorrow if a 9/11 kind of a scenario takes place, yes, I would agree America is protected by oceans on both its sides, but terrorism cannot be ruled out. The way he is talking about Gaza, he is alienating the Arab world. Tomorrow, let's assume there is a major terrorist attack on homeland of America. Who will assist America? I'm telling you, none of its allies will now fight with him because they have realized that America cannot be trusted. Its credibility is on the downswing. So therefore, America, can it fight a war alone? My answer is in plain terms, no. Americans cannot accept body bags. They have the money, but they cannot accept the body bags. And the way he is now going about chopping on the defense budget also, and he's thinking to have something like the Iron Dome shield, that is not going to protect America. You can have the best of air defense systems, but terrorists can attack any country anywhere, and we have seen it. It's happened. Even in the recent New Year attack in New York, it has happened. So now coming on to this question of closing up with Russia and the payoffs with China. Why so much interest? He wants to be a peacemaker, but at the end of the day, why is he not taking Ukraine alongside? Because Ukraine is also a party to the conflict. Whether Ukraine is to be blamed, I somehow have my different views. I don't feel Ukraine has to be blamed. If tomorrow, 94, the nuclear weapons, Ukraine would not have surrendered to Russia, about 1,900, this war wouldn't have taken place. And I think they were all fooled. And that is how this attack has taken place. So it has got a lot of dimensions. But keeping the China factor in mind, firstly, China and Russia can never be fighting a war. They are going to be allies, and President Putin has already dialed Xi Jinping and told him that we are strategic allies. So America, I feel, may be going on a downward path, because in this war, the win-win situation is for Russia, total win-win. And another factor, I feel, of President Trump is he's also looking, he's somehow motivated by Elon Musk. I think inherent aim could be having Tesla cars being sold to as a market in Russia. Probably that is also an option, the way he's talking about it in India also. So that's also a possibility. But now if you come onto the Soviet side or the Russian side, Russians are aware the typical post-Afghan war happened just because of the Americans. The way Americans funded the jihadists, they were doing everything, and that was the end of the Soviet Empire. Can Putin, who was an ex-KGB employee, forget all this? So he also is using this so-called closing up of Trump towards his advantage. He is agreeing to agree now. But in the long run, I
All
think
right,
this is
let
a
me
division
also
of
rope in Adit
America.
Kothari into this conversation. Adit, what do you make of this changing dynamics? The Americans obviously, principally and ideologically have always been averse to the Russian way of life. And when I say way of life, I mean their politics, their outlook towards the world, their defense and their political stance, their way of approving how America in fact conducts their affairs. There's always been this huge, tug of war between these two nations, and who can forget the Cold War, that dissipated in the mid 90s. Is this something that the world can look forward to, or do you think this is perhaps a sign of trouble?
Vineet, I think the global geopolitical script massively flipped yesterday with the way the US basically voted against the UN resolution. So somehow the America's first policy is now benefiting Russia, and it also pays off India's strategic autonomy as well. So the bigger question that I think looms is, why was this? Is this tactical? Is this some sort of a strategy to woo Vladimir Putin? And I would like to think that Donald Trump is basically thinking from a perspective of a real estate magnate. It's all about a land deal at the end of the day, and he's thinking it from that perspective that you give away land and you can buy the peace. However, that's not what Putin is basically thinking. Putin's looking at it more from a sovereignty angle. He doesn't believe that Ukraine has the right to be a sovereign state, because he ultimately looks at Ukraine being a sovereign state as a direct threat to Russia's own existence, and that's where I think the conflict comes. Now the question is, through all of these tactics, will he be able to extract a peace from Ukraine and Russia through into the war? That is something that's probably a $5 billion question that I think everybody's asking. And more importantly, what is Europe's role? I mean, Europe's role in the grand scheme of things is Europe and Britain continue to support Ukraine. Now, with US sort of diminishing its presence in the war, how do they continue to fund? Will they use the 300 billion, the Russian funds which have been frozen in Europe? Will they use that to basically galvanize it to Ukraine, so Ukraine can actually sort of buy more weapons and sort of forfeit that, create some sort of a strength for themselves against the Russian aggression? That is something which Europe will need to answer. Also, what we need to understand is, how long can Europe actually sustain this? Because there is a growing right-wing politics in all of European nations today, and they are most likely not going to be in support of this particular war, because for them, it's their energy security which is a big issue, and they see Russia to provide that sort of energy security to them. At this point, UK and Europe is going through a massive amount of economic turmoil and inflation because of being embroiled in this war. And the people in general, the European people, are not happy to be involved in that war, which basically hampers their day-to-day lives. So all of these questions peg into the question whether or not America is going to, put into some sort of a leeway, and thereby also construct some sort of a nervousness in their other allies. I mean, Taiwan is already starting to feel nervous with the kind of moves that America's made today.
Okay.
So, it does open up that Pandora's box, Vineet.
All right, Joyita, how does this axis work? China and Russia, US against Russia, against China, beg your pardon, and China against US. How is this dynamic going to work according to you?
Well, first of all, let's get one thing very clear. Number one, we are way past Cold War I. If there is a Cold War happening right now, that is Cold War 2.0, that is between basically US and China. And of course, because ultimately the fight is for the China to displace US as the number one power of the world. I mean, from basically from what is initially for some time now unipolar world in terms of the US being the sole authority, the sole hegemon. Now it is perhaps moving towards a bipolar world, and China's ultimate aim is to make it into a unipolar world where it will be occupying the that unipolar world. I mean, it is number one. So Mr. Trump realizes that if you are looking at Europe, Europe is irrelevant now, Europe is irrelevant, it does not have that kind of money anymore, it does not think of, and they have been so, I mean, totally driven by the focus, the thinking that still Cold War 1.0, where Russia is the enemy and to Putin must be toppled. So, that was the whole, that is the whole idea, that is the whole, I mean, I would say push behind the Russia-Ukraine war, after Russia of course invaded, but it is a different matter. There was a lot of provocation from the European side, including particularly from Britain and the US. Mr. Biden also was totally focused on this, you know, Atlantic centric worldview, when the focus actually should be in the Indo-Pacific. Now, this is something Trump realizes. Now, Biden and Europe still did not realize it. So, as a result of which they are still so focused on this big bad enemy that Putin is. China is fine, you know, we are going to do business with them, they do not want anything from us. What has happened in Europe? Europe has been, look at what has happened for example in Britain, one of the countries that has been kind of goading they are all for, you know, fighting Russia till the last Ukrainian standing. So, what has happened to Britain? Britain is going bankrupt. It's FDI, it's this thing is gone down. The Bank of England is worried because the gold reserves it's gone. I mean, their people even until Rishi Sunak brought things back to an extent, but otherwise their people were not getting 3 square meals a day. It was that bad. Look at what is happening in throughout Europe. I mean, this whole right wing push is coming in because the Europe's so called, you know, left wing and so called liberal and this anti-Russia governments, they have been driving their countries to the brink, you see, and that is one of the reasons why there is this whole reaction coming in. Now, if we do not realize that you know, there is a churn happening in the world and stick to by saying, my God, Europeans are right. No, no one is right. Everybody in this case will be looking after their own interest, just as the way India did, just as the way Biden actually was looking after his own party's interest. Trump is looking after America's interest. What is good for America? No war, prices come down, you have a deal with Russia, prices come down, oil prices and all this inflation and all, everything needs to be controlled. And I find it difficult to believe that Mr. Trump, who came with a landslide, has lost his popularity in 1 month. No, that has not happened. You talk to normal Americans, they are totally sold on him. Frankly, this Russia problem is not on their thing. All that they care for is, you know, inflation coming down and these, as I said, racism, this anti-immigration policies, that has to go. The government wasteful spending, that has to be curbed, and you see, the war must end. So, these are the sole platforms and sole vision that Trump is delivering on and driving. So, it is his domestic agenda which is actually deciding his foreign policy, and people love him for that. All right. So, let us not kid ourselves into believing that the Europeans have are the God's gift to mankind. No, they are not. They have lost the plot. They do not matter geopolitically any longer. You think India cares for what the Europeans think? You think India even cared for what the Americans think when we were, only we were taking into consideration when we were buying Russian oil, we are still buying, we were taking into consideration what the US was saying. We did not care about what Europe was thinking. And what did Mr. Jaishankar also say?
Correct.
What makes Europe think that, you know, every problem that the Europe has is the world's problem, but it is not vice versa. I mean, after all, Russia-Ukraine war is a local European war. Much more is happening to the world. So, let us not kid ourselves into believing that, you know, but for Europe, no, there is a world outside of Europe. It is high time Trump understands that. Europe still does not understand how irrelevant it has become. That is why, you know, it cannot even find an entry into the room where Trump and Putin, Trump's people and Putin's people are talking. That is why our French President Macron has to go running to the White House to try and, you know, cut a deal, strike a deal, pacify Trump, but I don't think that's going to work.
All right. Okay. Well said, Joyita. In fact, we've run out of time. Appreciate everybody who joined us and weighed in on this important turn of events or churn in foreign policy that's happening at the American level. We'll take a short break. Be right back.